what I'm going to show is something I've been working on the sides to solve a problem that's been annoying me, which is that you have this huge YAML config file, right? And then you think, oh, I should use Dagger because I don't like YAML engineering. And so you take your GitHub Actions or whatever pipeline. In my case, it's GitHub Actions. And then you replace it with a Dagger pipeline, which is really great. It's fun. You run it locally, blah, blah, blah. And then you still want to run it in CI. And so what we encourage people to do is, unless you're really hardcore and you want to rip out your whole CI and go full Dagger native, which at the moment is kind of a really cool thing to do, but also pretty niche. Usually what you do is you keep your existing CI and then you just keep it as a sort of a shell, right? So you still have some YAML. It just says run this Dagger pipeline, right? And so the way I do that at the moment, and now you can show my screen. So I go to the docs and I have these pipelines that I set up, right? Let's say I have a build and a test, and now I want to run them from CI. So I'll go to integrations. Okay, so how do I run this from GitHub Actions? And it'll give me snippets, right? Okay, here are examples. So I'm going to copy paste this into these files, and then I'm going to tweak them. And then what happens is over time, I'm going to want to customize them. And I still have to mess with these files a little bit. And it's definitely way better than before. But I got used to the benefits of Dagger now. I want more. So I even this is too much. So basically, especially in large projects like the Dagger engine itself, if you look at RCI, it's huge. There's a lot going on. We test Dagger with a Dagger with a Dagger and all sorts of craziness. And so there is a fair amount of YAML engineering still. And so what I want to do is stop writing any YAML by hand. I want this stuff to be generated directly from my code. So I want to Daggerize the creation of this. Hence the title, a Dagger pipeline to generate the GitHub Actions pipeline to run my Dagger pipelines. I don't know if that makes sense. So I'm going to try and demo the result. I have a module. I'll start by showing that. So if you go to Daggerverse and you search for GHA, oh, that's probably too small, right? If you search for GHA, you'll find my module. GHA is for GitHub Actions. And you'll see some examples. Shout out to Marcos for implementing this cool feature where you can actually add your own custom examples to your modules in Daggerverse. We haven't really announced this yet, so it's kind of secret, but it works really well. See, I have my own cool examples. They're not generated. I wrote these. And so I'm going to use this module to try and live simplify my CI process even more. Hold on, let me just make this bigger. Smain and Miranda, I'm going to use you as proxies to the entire audience. Does this make sense so far? Do you have any questions?
Yeah, what was the module that you brought up again?
Oh, it's GHA. So it's github.com/shykes/GHA.
Great. I'll share the link with the audience.
So I'm going to use my sandbox repo as a guinea pig here. So this is just it's where when I don't know where to put stuff, I just put it here. I honestly don't even remember these projects. Just imagine this is your app, right? At the moment, I don't have anything. I haven't even Daggerized this, right? It's kind of a throwaway thing. So let's say I'm going to take it from the top. I'm Daggerizing my module. So Dagger init, I'm going to do it in the SDK, in the Go SDK. And this is the right text size? I'm going to assume yes. Okay. So, and then let's say I'm just going to, I'm trying this new editor called Sed. So, sorry, let me start again. Let me just tuck away my files here to be more realistic. Okay, so I got my project. And then here I have my pipelines, right? Is this also readable?
It is, but give me 1 second because I want to try. I want to see something. See if we can do give people more of your screen. 1 second.
Okay. While you do that, I'm just writing a very simple. I'm just pretending I'm Daggerizing my project. I'm just getting started. So I'm going to build a container, and something like that container from Alpine and I'm going to copy. I'm going to copy the. You have to pass the source. Something as like simple but realistic, right? Pass the source into. Right? Is it with directory? Oh, it's the path first. It's a /src. Pass the source. Okay, good enough. Oh, maybe. All right. And then maybe a test, like a fake, it's going to be totally fake, but, test would be I would just call build and exec something. I don't know what. I'll just pretend it worked every time. Success. Okay. And then I'm going to just force execution of that and return the error. So something very basic like that. Okay. Okay. So now this is where usually I would say, okay, this works great. This works great if I don't do any typos. Why am I here? Let me start again. Okay. This is me being stupid with my tools.
I can play some cool music. We have that option.
To make my demo sound more lame, less lame. Please do whatever it takes. I promise it'll be worth it. Okay, there's a buildup, but it'll be worth it, I hope. Okay, so now I'm still daggerizing, nothing special. So I'm just checking that it works. And it does not work, but that's okay. I'm going to fix it. Will I fix it? Oh, my window's too small. Okay, what's the error? Oh, I forgot the sync, right? Okay, I need to get the context. Okay, so for those of you watching who are not familiar with the Dagger, this is like Dagger 101, basically. Okay, try again. Okay, cool. I have a basic module, right? So I can call build. I would do this. Actually, can't wait for context directories. Okay, it worked. Test. Test says success. Does it say success? Anyway, actually, you know what? This would be interesting more interesting if I do this. I'm going to return the standard output. And then I'll just return that. Okay, we're done with the buildup. So make sure it works. Cool, success. So now I can have this locally. I can run my pipelines locally. Great. But now we're going to run it from CI. So I would add this and say, daggerize, yay. And then I go to the docs like I showed before. And I go, okay, well, I got to copy paste this. But no, there's a better way. I can do this. I can call. Let's check out this module I was talking about. Let me hide this for a second.
And can you make your font as big as you're comfortable with?
Like this? Is that big enough?
I think that, yes, that'll be helpful.
Okay, cool. So I mentioned this is the module. All right, I'm going to install this mysterious GHA module. And then, once this is done, I'm going to add one more function to my module. And I'm not sure what the best practice is here, still figuring it out. But for now, for simplicity's sake, I'm going to call it CI config or something like that. And this is going to be the function that generates the GitHub action, the CI configuration I want for this repo, right? I'm just going to call it CI config. And it's going to return a directory. Specifically, it's going to return my GitHub directory, right? So then what do I run here? Let's see if autocomplete works. Okay, cool. So before I show you the code, let me just try and play with it with the command line real quick. So Dagger functions, all right, sorry, Dagger-m gha functions. So this module has 3 functions. You can add pipelines with pipeline. You can add a bunch of them. So a pipeline here is it's a call to a Dagger pipeline that you specify, and then you specify triggers for running that pipeline, right? And the triggers are all the GitHub events. So you basically say, if these events happen on the repo, then run this Dagger pipeline, and then that's all you have to do. And then in the end, you just call config to get the directory, and then validate to make sure it works. But you can ignore validate because it always works. So for example, I could say with pipeline, let me see the arguments here.
A question that came in is that one GitHub workflow.
Yes, I'll show you the files after, but what I call pipeline here is one Dagger call wrapped inside one GitHub Actions job, wrapped inside one GitHub Actions workflow, right into one workflow file. And I've tried a few different patterns, but this one seems to work the best. And but if it needs further customization, we can add it. One thing I'll show is once you have this generated, it's much more fun to try new stuff in the generator than to try new stuff in one of many manually written YAMLs. It's really nice. So you'll see we even got some bonus features out of that. So you can see there's a lot of on something. These are all the triggers. On pull request, you can say run the pipeline on any pull request activity or only when it's opened or reopened. And basically I've been scraping the schema from GitHub Actions with the help of my good friend ChatGPT, and then just map that to arguments. But really, this is the stuff you need. You need the command, and really and the name. Name is important on the GitHub side because it's going to show up as your check, etc. So the bare minimum would be this. It would be Dagger call -m gha with pipeline. I'm going to call this one build. And then the command. These are arguments to Dagger call. It ends up being a shell command. So you can reference environment variables. You can reference local files, right? So in here, I need it because I'm going to call build --source dot, right? And then let's be more ambitious here. Oh, I forgot to say when. Okay, so if I don't specify any triggers, by default, I enable a special trigger, which I discovered, called dispatch, which allows you to, this is the thing that you have to turn on so that you can go and manually run the workflow from GitHub Actions. And I figured, let's just turn that one on by default, because if it's a Dagger call, it's always callable. So there's an optional argument to disable that, but by default, all of those will be manually runnable. But I also want to say on pull request and on push, but only pushes to main. I think this is valid. Let's see if it's valid. Okay, so I'm going to keep going. And then let me just add one more. With pipeline test source equals dot. This seems repetitive, but it's really important that it's a shell command, because you need access to stuff outside the sandbox, right? Like this is a local directory. There's a few cool features, like for example, GitHub Actions has a whole stupid DSL, shouldn't say stupid, really creative DSL to access special GitHub specific stuff, but it's not in the shell script. It's like an additional thing, right? And actually you can see it here in the docs. Let's say you want to access a secret, And so what Kyle did in his example here is you want to call build, so same general thing, but here in this case, it's to set the Dagger cloud token. But imagine you want to deploy and you need to pass a secret as an argument. How do you get that argument? Well, from a GitHub Actions secret. But is that GitHub Actions secret in the environment? No, you got to reference it with this special, weird, non-bash compatible syntax. Screw that. So if, let's say I have a secret called API, deploy server password or something, then I would add secrets, deploy server password. This is the name of the GitHub secrets. And then right away, no other shenanigans needed. I can go -- password equals deploy server password. So under the hood, I'm going to generate the config needed to inject that in the environment. There's also a whole bunch of GitHub magic variables, not secret, but stuff like what's the current GitHub user? What's the current branch? What's the current repository? There's like 30 of those. And same thing, you can't just access them. You got to go and plumb them through the YAML DSL. No longer, my friends, because they are all right here. So I can say, I don't know where to plug this in, but actually, yeah, imagine I need an argument called user. So I could say, or ref, or branch, something. I could say GitHub ref. I think that's it. There's a list somewhere, and boom, I have it. So that means, for example, you have everything you need. Actually, I can use it like this. I can say, you know what? I don't need the checkout. I'm going to check out from GitHub repository URL at GitHub ref. I'm kind of trying to remember, but these are, they're defined by GitHub. But the point is I can access them. They're right here. There's nothing else I need to do. Okay, and when I'm done, oops. And let's say this I want to do on push, on all pushes, all branches, and also on pull requests. I don't know. On pull requests, I'm going to revert this. On all pushes, but only pull requests that target main. And when I'm done, I'll just get the config directory. That's it. So just to show you, okay, let's not wipe stuff here. Okay, I'm confident. I'm just going to export it to the root of the repo. Drum roll. Is that the drum roll? There it is. So, no, it works. It works. Okay, so you can see my test.yaml, my build.yaml, and this is what they look like. So this is the generated stuff. It says it's generated. You can see the events properly matched. On pull requests, on all push, anyway, the GitHub stuff. There's one job. It's always called Dagger. You could configure this. So, for example, if I wanted to, I think I can configure by default. If you have a custom self-hosted runner, you can say, I think as a constructor argument, you can say runner equals, super excel 3 - Gerhardt special with barbecue sauce. Gerhardt is our head of infrastructure. He runs all the awesome self-hosted runners. So I'll just rerun this. And there it is. Yoo-hoo. You can also override this at the pipeline level. So you can say this pipeline runs on this pipeline runs on this, blah, blah, blah. So then what I did is I broke this down. Oh, you know what? While I describe this, I'm going to push it to see if it actually works, because I don't actually have any CI on this repo. So I'm just going to commit it and see if it works. Honestly, I'm not sure it'll work, but we'll see. Okay, so while I do that, just to walk you through the file real quick. This is the install Dagger that I copy pasted from our official GitHub Actions. Note, I do not call our external GitHub action. I just kind of replace it, just cut out the middleman. And that's kind of a theme here. Since everything's configurable and parameterizable at the generation level, the output is basically like a blob. There's no moving parts, because you don't need the moving parts, and it makes it actually more reliable, and I think it'll be faster. So here you can see it just downloads Dagger, and then there's you can also parameterize the Dagger version, right? So by default it's latest, But if, let's say if I want, oh wait, this is definitely not going to work. I guess it is going to work because I pushed a generated version. You can parameterize the version. So for example, if I go back and I say, I think it's engine version, and I really want 0.12.5. I just want to lock that version. I want to manage upgrades myself. Oh, Dagger version. Oh, there it is, 0.12.5, et cetera, et cetera. And then I also added a warm engine step so that it, you have to download this container. Anyone who's gone through the GitHub Actions logs of a Dagger job, you know what I mean. You have to scroll past the download stuff to get to the good stuff. So I just put small improvement while I was at it. This is the kind of improvement that does not require a generator, but the reality is there's a reason no one did it before. It's just a pain in the ass to develop that YAML stuff. So no one does it. And now it's honestly fun. So, you end up doing it. And this is the exec. And it's a little fancy. I'll show why in a second. This is all the scraping I was talking about. So by default, the Dagger Cloud token is set up if you need it. And then you have all this GitHub stuff. Oh, notice this is the secret that I asked for. And then all the special introspection stuff. It's always there. And let's see if it worked. So let's go to.
And quickly, Solomon, do you use a special library to generate the GitHub Actions YAML, or is it just a YAML library?
Oh, it's just a special YAML. It's just a YAML library. I also have an option to configure it as JSON because it turns out JSON is compatible, is a subset of YAML. So JSON is valid YAML. So there's a flag you can add to just get it all as JSON. If you think it's like a spiritual journey you're on to really get rid of YAML, you actually can. So, but yeah, there's nothing special. Honestly, what I did is I just wrote all the types myself, and it's 90% of the work was just ChatGPT, and then I just kind of fine tune it, and then I add the Dagger logic on top. So yeah.
And then if it was adding the fun fact that you can use Dagger core version now to warm up the engine.
Yes, exactly. So now you can see the way that's a good example. That's a possible improvement. So I encourage any of you to open that pull request. But the way I warm the engine here is I call Dagger query, and I send this neat little query. I think we should keep that because that'll work with older versions of Dagger. But let's say we wanted to change that later. Where would you open that pull request? How would you change that? Just to show you what it looks like. All those scripts are actually proper scripts. They're here. So this is the warm engine script. There it is. So you would just change that line. Way easier to test locally. Like this is the exec. You can actually call it locally, and it'll sort of locally produce the GitHub stuff. So it's and then all that gets assembled into the final thing. So once you have a generator, everything becomes easier, basically. And there's no templating, basically. Also, right? This is not a generic templatized. This is not the helm of GitHub Actions, right? It's much more narrowly scoped than that. You can't generate any GitHub Actions YAML. Only the ones you need to perfectly run a Dagger pipeline. So let me just switch to that action, to my little sandbox thing, and see if it worked. And I'm going to make that bigger. Add CI. Oh, that's not good. Queued, waiting to run. Oh, we're waiting for GitHub? Oh, Gerhardt, I need the super special Excel runner. Okay, that was a mistake, obviously.
Jeremy was saying that. He said, guessing you don't have the Gerhardt special.
No, I do not. Okay, so this is a good example because one of the reasons I wanted to generate this is, yes, it's annoying to copy paste that snippet, but also a lot of the customization that happens for us, for example, all the YAML engineering that's left, even after you Daggerize, it's not really in the logic, although there is some stuff. It's in the infrastructure, like, oh, if it's this kind of pipeline, then set it up in this runner, unless it's a fork, and then do this, do that. And so I also want all of that generated because right now it's kind of a black box. It's kind of a silo. and the number of people who are really up to speed on it and can really reason about it and maintain it, it's a very small number of people right now. It's basically Gerhardt and Matthias, and everyone else is like wants to help, but we can't. And so this kind of creates, it just expands the effect that Dagger already had on the other half of the pipeline, where now everyone can participate. So yeah, so to illustrate that, let me just make that fix that little mistake I made. And actually, I should have just done this in code, but for now it's in the command line. So
and while if you are able to multitask, another question that came in was so the GitHub action will generate the steps in order to define in the order defined by the Dagger functions in this example.
No, because the way GitHub Actions works is each workflow runs in parallel, unless there are dependencies between them. And then there's a whole complicated system for that. But we don't need that because we use Dagger, right? So we really, the idea is we're using a very small subset of what GitHub Actions can do because we don't need all that. And it comes with complexity and lock-in, right? So the generator treats, it uses GitHub Actions' ability to parallelize and hook up events and call Dagger, and that's about it. So yeah, there's no order; they'll run all in parallel.
Okay, so that means the function ordering is important here, or no?
The function ordering is not important. No.
Cool.
Look at me! I'm pushing and praying. So that is something also I'd like to fix. Like I want to hook up this stuff to Gale or some other effort to, Daggerize the GitHub Actions runner. So at some point I would love to be able to test, kind of go full circle and say, you know what, before pushing this, let me just test locally that it works by running an actual GitHub Actions runner and somehow running the job, So, at some point in the future. So while it reruns, let me just kind of finalize here and say that I showed this in the command line so we can explore, but the idea is, I think you would do this here, right? So the equivalent would be dag.gha, Dagger version, okay, no custom runner. Then with pipeline, build -source dot, and then a bunch of options, right? Oh, thank you, little AI, on push branches. You get the idea, right? So I'm writing it in code, which feels really nice, I can tell you. Oh, wow, that is actually correct. Thank you. Look at that, AI assisted CI. Wow, okay. The robots are taking over.
I have a question actually.
Yep.
Do you have to maintain this mapping between the GitHub variables and the ones that you're building? You have to update anytime there is a change on the GitHub side?
Like for example, if this changes here, if the variable changes?
The list of variables that you have in your generated pipeline.
Oh, like the GitHub _.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if they change the API, then yes, we would have to update the module. Okay. I don't think it's changing very rapidly. I think it's pretty frozen. And from what I'm hearing, GitHub Actions is not really under active development anymore. They're focusing on keeping the lights on.
I mean, you didn't use something to generate from the API.
Oh, no. Well, I did it manually, and I just had ChatGPT do the scraping and generating as a starting point. So it's semi-manual, let's say.
Okay.
Yeah, I didn't go all the way to a full-blown scraping and generating pipeline. I feel like at some point we could do that because the schema is out there, so it's definitely doable. It's just more work than I had time for. Okay, let's see. So this looks correct. So now I would just call. Let's see. Oh, we're almost. Do you have a little more time left, Miranda?
Yes, let's go for
Okay.
it. You're good.
Okay. Hopefully people find this interesting and useful. So -m, I would say Dagger call CI config, and I have to export that back to .github. So that way, it's expressed in code instead of that shell command. Oh. Okay, so if you say so. CI config. Okay, no difference. So it looks like it worked. Oh no. Uh-oh. Oops. So this is anyone who's tried to do code gen in Dagger, there's a little rough edge, which is that you have to be careful not to get you have to pass the output directory yourself. So I just got the directory wrong. Let me try again. Okay, so there is a change. Oh, did I forget to? Oh yeah, I didn't pass any triggers, right? I didn't pass the triggers to the test pipeline. My kids are showing up, of course. On pull request. Oh, on push. On pull request, branches. I'm trying to exactly match what I did before. That seems right. Let me try and call it again. There you go. Exactly the same. More praying. I'm not going to push because I don't want to retrigger everything. Let's see if it worked. Failure. Okay, so why did it fail? I guess. Oh, source. I got the variable wrong, maybe. Yeah, I remember when I said, oh, it's probably GitHub this, GitHub that. That's probably wrong. I think they show the environment somewhere. You see the command here. Yeah, I think I should have. Okay, I got that argument wrong. What I wanted to show you, though, is even though it failed, I now have this really cool markdown summary that I generate to look at. So I don't actually have to go through the logs. And this is generated by my workflow. So it says, okay, this was the Dagger version. This is the command you ran. This is what was printed. This is standard output. And these are the logs. And so I can see, oh, I screwed up. This is also something, technically you could develop this without a generator, but again, why would you go through the hell of doing that in pure YAML and then trying to get everyone to hook it up manually? Oh, and you can see the other one succeeded. So this one, I can go to the summary. I had this version. I called this command. This was the output. So remember, it's a build. So return the container type, right? And then I can see the logs. And just to close that loop real quick, let me just, okay, I'm going to demonstrate that you can actually use this thing to debug an actual bug in your pipeline. So I'm going to go here. Oh, this is what it looks like. Yeah, notice the tests, the checks look normal. Let me go back here for a second. Summary. Okay, so wait, what did I do? GitHub repository URL. Oh, I should also get this, the trace to work properly. It looks like the environment variable was wrong. So give me I'm going to give myself 1 minute here.
No problem.
Repository URL. Oh, look at that. There's no, what is that? Look at that. I guessed wrong. There was no, what I'm saying, I thought there was an underscore here and there isn't. You know what? That's maybe my my scraping that's wrong. Maybe I injected it wrong. Anyway, let me just fix that real quick. So I would go here and just remove this and then generate again. this is something that local testing with the local runner would have caught. So eventually we'll remove the push and pray element of this, right? More praying still. Let me push that. And back to the code. Okay, we are waiting.
And while we're waiting, actually, there's a question around the deploy function. And so just, like clarity around how to use it. So you would ensure the deploy function must call the build tests and check those passed. And then it will be deployed. So it's kind of like 3 different stages.
Yeah, but that's
deployed.
That's all the regular Dagger stuff. So I mean, if you have dependencies between pipelines, you handle that in Dagger, right? So I'm assuming there's a place where you want to individually call build, individually call test, but there's no, like that. For example, the test function calls build, as we saw in the code. So maybe I don't need this, right? The reason I'm calling build is just in case it's useful to see it, but it's not actually needed for test at all. So maybe I'll remove it for clarity, and then so this is where we talk about existing best practices for Daggerizing things. What happens is let's say you have 10 different pipelines in GitHub Actions, right? And some of them have, they have dependencies between each other. So it's kind of a mess. But also they take advantage of things like parallelization, right? So what happens is you start Daggerizing these pipelines, and then you start the process of collapsing. A lot of times you realize, well, I don't need 4 different GitHub Actions things that depend on each other with this complicated, weird language that I can't test. Instead, I'll just have this one Dagger function, and then it will take care of calling subfunctions and figuring that out for me. So you have this collapsing, right? You have 500 lines of YAML, and they become like 50 lines of code. So that's regular Dagger. But usually what happens in a real project with constraints is you collapse over time until you reach an equilibrium where you could collapse further, but then you would lose features of your CI that you actually want or need because Dagger doesn't do them natively usually. So for example, parallelization, right? Dagger doesn't do horizontal scaling. So if you collapse everything into one function called CI, which you probably can do, it'll handle the dependencies more elegantly and with caching, etc. But it's all going to do it on the one machine. And sometimes that's not acceptable. You need to scale out your tests to like 2 or 10 or 100 runners. So in that case, that's where you stop collapsing. And that's what dictates what's left in your CI config. So it depends on your project. But that means this part, there always remains a part where you can't forget entirely about your CI configuration. You have to manage it. And here I'm just proposing you manage it with a special Dagger function. So you can manage it in code and not worry about the nitty-gritty of the YAML implementation of managing it, because it gets repetitive and then it just kind of gets in the way. So hopefully that helps. Let me go back to what did I do this time? Oh, okay, build succeeded. Oh, and drum rolls for the tests. Oh, it looks like it worked. We're in post checkout. What is post checkout? I don't know what that is. I was just waiting for GitHub, I think. Let me look at the summary. Oh, GitHub. This is where I need Gerhardt's runner. By the way, we have a bunch of projects underway to cut this overhead. Clearly, most of this is overhead. This should have been cached from last run. Setting up installing the engine each time shouldn't be needed. Oh, come on, I screwed up again. Oh no. Oh, I guess this is not a format that the Dagger CLI accepts, something like that. All right, let me end with a simple fix because I really wanted to see it green. Okay, focus, Solomon. We're just going to go back to, forget I tried to do this. I'm just going to do a local checkout for now. one more generation. Oh, one thing I wanted to do also is I noticed there's a way to have a GitHub Actions workflow that generates other GitHub Actions workflows dynamically and then runs those. It's a pain in the ass to do, but it's possible. So maybe at some point, even this part, the generation part, that could be moved into CI. So you would not even have to call the generation. You would just change the code, change the code here, and then git push, and then it would be regenerated on the CI side. Pray. Okay.
And while we're waiting for that, there's actually another general question that came in. So thanks everyone for participating.
Yeah.
What are the cases wherein Dagger functions need to be tested? For example, like unit integration, and if so, how?
Oh yeah. So this module mine does not address that, but it is a very hot topic right now on our Discord. Testing your own module is something that a lot of people want to do, including me. And so people are doing with different patterns, and we started the work of sort of blessing one pattern and making sure it works great. And the two possible patterns are really either you have a submodule in your module and you call it tests or dev or whatever, and then you move the functions in there, the meta stuff, the functions to test your functions, you move in there so it's not confusing. And then you just Dagger call test -m dev or -m test, right? So that works well. You just have to grok it, but then it's easy. And the other approach is to have the functions in there, like mixed with the rest of the module. So it's like a module that knows how to test itself. The problem with that is it can be confusing to the consumers of your module. Like they see your API and then they see a bunch of extra functions that are irrelevant to them as users, right? What's being proposed, and literally there's a Discord thread ongoing right now. We got Eric in there and Alex and Justin and Mark. And the idea is to hook up support for your native test tooling. And then the SDKs would take care of it. So for example, if you're developing your module in Go, you would just write regular Go tests. And then there would be a new command called Dagger test that would pick that up. Well, have the SDK pick it up, and then it would be like a special case. So I have a feeling we're going to do that, and it's going to be awesome. So it's coming soon. And this is just not running. I don't know. Yeah, again, that is a hot topic for us, just making the CI runner just faster so that there's less overhead. And so expect more news on that front soon. Oh, it worked. Look at that. Test. I ran this command with this version of Dagger, and it produced success. And if I want, I can look at the logs. Yay. Okay, it worked.